Hello everybody, how you doing? This is Mr. Dow. So this is the second video going over practice problems on the 45, 45, 90 right triangles. And so let me do one thing here real fast that I forgot to do. I came to the video. Let me put the rules for what's going on, like the steps on the very top here. So let's see here. So if we look here, it says find the missing sides, use the steps above for help, show your work. So that's what we got going on here. So it says label the sides opposite the angles. So on every single one of these problems that I'm going to do here, we're going to do this first, right? We're going to label the sides opposite the angles as x, and then opposite the 90, we're going to label x square root 2. And I'm not going to do all of these videos. I'll do maybe about half of them, and then I'll post the answers on Google Classroom if you want to look at the answers. Also, I'll leave the answers on the screen, on the board in the front, just next to my desk. So here we go. So I have labeled everything x. Now this says solve for x. So to solve for x here, we've already done that, right? X is equal to 2. That's one of the legs. So if this x is 2, this x is going to be 2 as well. And then this x is going to become now 2, so that's going to become 2 square root 2. So that is the answers to these problems here. So we found the leg. It's very easy to find everything else. If we look at number 2, though, this one is a little bit more challenging, and you'll see why in just a moment. So I'm labeling everything as x, x, and x square root 2. So here, the hypotenuse is given to us as a whole number. And so unfortunately, this is where we've got to set an equation equal to each other, and we need to solve for x. So if I want to solve for x, again, I want to get x by itself. I'm going to divide by the square root of 2. And I get x is equal to 13 over the square root of 2. Let's just make this a decimal, just because, why not? Again, it doesn't really matter. Might just be prettier to do that, and I end up getting 9.2. So if you were to make the legs either 13 square root 2 or 9.2, it doesn't really matter here. I'm just going to do this as small as possible because there's not a lot of space on the paper. So that is the answer, to those legs here. 9.2 for both of those, or again 13 over the square root of 2. Now looking at number 3, let's move on here. Let's change colors so things don't just keep blending in here. So opposite the 45s, I'm going to label x. Opposite the 90 is going to be my x square root 2. And notice again we're given the hypotenuse, but the hypotenuse has a square root of 2 next to it. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to end up dividing both sides by the square root of 2. And the square root of 2's go away, so x is just left with 8. So both of these answers end up being 8 because, again, the legs are identical. And so these are nice because, again, they just kind of simplify out very nicely here. So let's move on. Let's do a couple more. So number 4, we look here, opposite the 45, I'm going to label x. Opposite the 45, I'm going to label x. Opposite the 90, I label x squared root 2. And so here now we need to solve for x. We know x is 16 in this case, right? So if this leg is 16, so is this leg. And then now this x is a 16, so this hypotenuse ends up being a length of 16 times the square root of 2. And just kind of, there we go. So very nice. And something just popped in my mind, like you're just kind of going on blind faith that what I'm doing is correct. Let me just show you using the Pythagorean theorem very quickly that this actually does work out the way you think it would. So I would label, in this case, the a's are the legs, and the hypotenuse would be 16 square root 2. So if I plug in 16 in for a and b, because those are the legs, and I plug in 16 square root 2 for the hypotenuse, these should balance out for this to be a valid thing that we're doing here. I kind of wish I thought of this earlier, but I didn't. So 512 is the answer on the left. And if I do 16 times the square root of 2 squared, oops, that's not what I wanted, squared, I end up with 512 as well. And if you remember the lesson last time, if a squared plus b squared was equal to c squared, then we end up with a right triangle, and this is what we have. We have a right triangle. So this actually balances out. So let me do a couple more here. Let me kind of jump around and find some of the odd ones. Let's look at number 6. So number 6, let's see here. So opposite the 45s, we're going to label x. This is a 90. This is a 45. If you were to add those up, we'd get 135. And we take that away from 180. we also get 45-degree angles. So on some of these pictures, the angles, some of them are missing. But if one of them is a 90 and the other one's a 45, the other one has to be a 45 because the angles have to add up to 180. So opposite the other 45 is x. Then opposite the 90 is going to be my x square root 2. Again, this is a lot like the second problem where we're given a hypotenuse of a whole number. So if I were to set these equal to each other and solve for x, just divide both sides by the square root of 2. And x is equal to, again, you can leave it as 4 over the square root of 2. I'm running out of space here, so I'm going to try and make this decimals because that'll squeeze in a little bit easier. And I end up with a 2.8. So x is 2.8 here. And again, you could have put 4 over square root of 2 for either one of these. You end up with the same answer. So let me do maybe 2 more. Let's see here. Let's look at, I don't know. Let's just look at number 9. So number 9 here. So again, we have a 45, a 90, and a 45, because if one of those is 45 and the other one's 90, then the other one has to be 45. So opposite the 45s, I label x. And then opposite the 90, we're going to be x square root 2. And so this one is very nice here. So you can set these equal to each other, or you can just kind of see that x is going to have to be 14 here, right? Because whenever you end up dividing both sides by the square root of 2 to get x by itself, you end up with x just being 14. And that's what ends up happening here. X ends up being just 14. So the legs here both end up being 14. So that finishes up number 9. And then let me do number 10 as well. So opposite the 45s, we have our x's. Opposite the 90 is our x square root 2. So here we're given x. X is 61. So the other leg must be 61. And then the hypotenuse must be 61 square root 2. So I'm going to pause this video here. And if the sub is showing this, please pause the video as well. And then a moment, I'll actually just, the answers will just appear. So I'm going to pause this video right now. So please pause the video sub as well. And let the students work on this for about, 7 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes. And then we'll put the answers up here in just a moment.